So today we're going to be hearing from Varsha from Suvita, and she's going to be talking about their really exciting work to try to secure immunizations for all. And I'm going to pass it off to her, and she will be able to talk for a while, and then we'll have time for questions and answers later on. And if you have a question that comes up as we go, you can also write that in the chat. So thank you, Varsha. I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you, Ryan. You can see me and you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. And well, thank you so much for accommodating my time. My kids are in the next room under strict instructions. Hopefully they hold out for the next hour. We will find out. I co-founded a nonprofit called Suvita last year, and Suvita is on a mission to save and improve lives by promoting safe and healthy behaviors. We ensure, as Ryan said, that children in India show up to their vaccine appointments. So what I'd like to do today is share with you the context of the challenges we are trying to address, tell you more about our solutions, and then run through our first year of existence, that's since last summer, and where we are at the moment. So this is a pie chart representing the 26 million children born in India each year. We know about 10 million of them are under-vaccinated. So out of these, about 2 million children do not reach at all the vaccine system. So they do not touch the health system. We have 1 million who get their birth doses, that's usually BCG, in the hospital when they are born and then drop off. And then there are 7 million children who attend the appointment for at least one more vaccine in the next 6 weeks, but then do not return for the remaining course. So they drop off after. So as a result, we know one child in India dies every 4 minutes of vaccine-preventable diseases. So what are we doing to address this? We focus on improving uptake of routine immunization by running 2 programs. One is harnessing community networks by recruiting volunteer immunization ambassadors. And the other one is around sending SMS reminders directly to parents and carers. So a bit more about the first program. This has been called gossip in the original research, and I can tell you more about that. We call it the Immunization Ambassador Program. And what it comprises of is, the first step is a survey to identify the natural influences by using a magic question. So you send a set of surveys into a village, into a random set of households, and they ask one simple question. If there was a fair in town, who is most likely to tell you about it? Now, by running an algorithm on the top responses we get, we identify the top gossips in the village. Then the surveyors go back into the village to recruit these gossips as immunization ambassadors. We then follow up regularly over the next few months with SMS messages and phone calls to encourage these ambassadors to mobilize people to attend for vaccinations in their community. The other program is an SMS reminders program. So earlier this year, we merged with another nonprofit called Charity Science Health, which has been GiveWell incubated, and they have been focusing on SMS reminders directly to parents and carers to improve uptake of routine immunization. So when we merged with them, we took over their resources and also their systems already in place to send out these SMS reminders. So how do we go about that? We obtain data on parents' phone numbers through door-to-door surveys. We also have staff stationed in hospitals, and we're also developing relationships with state governments. In fact, just today, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Maharashtra state government, which allows access to their reproductive child health data. Once we have these numbers, we send out SMS reminders to parents, which are customized in their local language and timed to their child's vaccination schedule to give them a nudge at a crucial time to prompt them to attend the vaccination camps. So for the parents and carers, we send these reminders 7 days before and 1 day before their child is due their vaccines. Now we know that both these interventions and programs are highly evidence-based. So the Ambassador program I mentioned, it is based on a large-scale randomized trial that was recently conducted in Haryana state in India by recent Nobel laureates Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo and others. So in their study, the gossip arm of the intervention led to a 25% increase in parents getting their kids to immunization camps. The SMSs, we have multiple systematic reviews, which includes at least 2 Cochrane reviews. We find that in all these cases, SMS reminders increase immunization coverage. We are also waiting for this JPAL study to come out over the next few months, which would give us better information and data on how to overlap the SMS and the gossip interventions in the areas we're working in. So we have this evidence for 2 highly cost-effective ways to boost immunization, but typically what we see is that this kind of research gets conducted and generates some interest, but does not get implemented. And that's where we come in. Our mission is to get these programs delivered at scale. So what have we done so far? We launched in August 2020. We went through the charity entrepreneurship incubation program, which is a 2-month incubation in the UK last summer. For anyone who may be interested, I'm happy to tell you more about that, or maybe Ryan can post a link to that as well. So they already had conducted some initial research on highly evidence-based, cost-effective programs within global health. So we built on that research and used certain criteria, including around evidence, on cost effectiveness, on tractability and scalability of such interventions. And that's how we decided to focus on nudges to improve uptake of routine immunization, specifically in India. So we launched the pilot immunization ambassador program, which was aiming to cover 5,000 eligible children by the end of this year. So by the end of the next few weeks, we expect to reach that milestone. In addition, the nonprofit we took on earlier this year, Charity Science Health, was already delivering SMS reminders, and we managed to enroll additional 40,000 parents. So we now have 250,000 parents we send out regular SMS reminders to. We then got incubated by NCORE, which is run by Nudge in India, which is another incubation program funded by Cisco and Omidyar and others. And we had a chance, of course, we then encountered COVID fairly soon into our existence and had to respond to that. And I'll tell you more about that in the subsequent slides. Yes, in terms of COVID response, when we came to know about COVID in March, we decided to move to remote work fairly soon, even before the government guidelines had come into effect. We have a duty of care towards our staff, and several of them are exposed to a higher risk given the nature of their work. They're surveyors who routinely go into hospitals to collect health data. So we had to put in place protocols and training to improve safety of our staff, which was our primary concern. In addition, we realized we had an opportunity to use our SMS messaging system to test COVID-related safe behaviors. So we partnered with a Harvard School of Public Health professor and his team, and we undertook a rapid adaptive randomized trial, sending out SMS messages on COVID-related health behaviors. So this trial will shed light on the kind of content, frequency, and timing of messages that can lead to higher uptake of health behavior messages. So in this case, of course, we were looking at very specific COVID-related health messages around social distancing, coughing in your elbow, hand washing. But some of the lessons around content, timing, and frequency, of course, hold for any kind of health behavior messaging, including on routine immunization. So the trial's now over, and the team's currently analyzing the data, and we hope to have some of the results from that research fairly soon. The other side of COVID-19, which is quite worrying for us, is the disruptions in the delivery and uptake of immunization services caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have, for instance, this WHO research that recently came out. They had conducted a survey of about 82 countries. And based on the response from, I think, about 3/4 of them, they found disruptions in immunization programs in I think, 3/4 of the countries as of May 2020. So in the case of India, what we believe based on the WHO and UNICEF estimates is that about several million children may have missed on their routine vaccinations over the last year. Now, we estimate a large percentage of these drop-offs may be a result of curfews imposed by the government rather than disruptions in the supply chains themselves. So in response to this COVID-related measures, we pivoted to a remote version of the pilot. Now, what this means is that we have surveyors calling a random set of households instead of physically going into the village to identify the gossips. And then we have the surveyors calling the gossips to recruit them as immunization ambassadors. So what we're doing now, and you see the theory of change there, and again, I can send the slide to you so you can see it clearer, is testing each element of this theory of change to see if it holds and if there is still high fidelity compared to the original JPAL research. So what's been the impact so far? We are planning to reach 5,000 eligible children by the end of 2020 when it comes to the gossip pilot, the remote version that we are undertaking. At the same time, we are testing the operational efficiency of this intervention and also looking to monitor some of the outcomes. The last step, which we would be undertaking early next year, is looking at the government reproductive and child health data and seeing if there has been an improved uptake in routine immunization as a result of our intervention. On the SMS reminders program, we now are sending out SMS reminders to 250,000 parents across several states in India. And we hope to, again, increase the operational efficiency of that intervention and also look into how both these interventions can overlap in different contexts. So our scaling opportunity here, we have just signed the MOU with the state government of Maharashtra, which we're quite excited about. Over the next year, we expect to expand to several districts in the 2 states we are primarily engaged in, that's Bihar and Maharashtra. Our end game, of course, is to reach all children in India over the next 5 to 10 years, and we will be proactively exploring pathways to do so. For instance, partnering with organizations such as JPAL, who have some of those existing state government relationships and could possibly turbocharge our rate of scaling up. We are also excited about the possibility of using the gossip network for other health interventions that may share similar characteristics with drop-off, which would be high intent but inaction. So for instance, maybe around vitamin A or maybe even around COVID vaccine, we would need to see if some of the similar mechanisms around immunization ambassadors could be used to nudge people to go get the vaccine. This is something we will be looking into next year. So in terms of next steps, we expect to reach a stage fairly soon over the next few months where we have increased confidence in this gossip model, both in terms of operational efficiency gains and related cost effectiveness analysis, as well as some of the figures around impact and effectiveness. And at that point, the impediments to scale, at least in these 2 states, where we have existing partnerships, would be, of course, would be funding. So what's our end game? Our end game is happy, healthy families. These are some of our SMS users in Bihar state in India. And that's pretty much it. I'd like to shout out to our advisors and volunteers and individual funders. I think I saw one of them sign up here. And here are some of our institutional funders who have supported us so far. So thanks to you all and thanks to them. And yeah, looking forward to any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Varsha. So I'll start it off just with a quick question, and then we'll open it up. And if anyone would like to type questions in the chat, you can. And if you're here in the room with me, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I wanted to ask, for those of us who feel kind of far away from this work you're doing, um, why is India sort of an important target for this kind of work right now? And can you relate this work at all to sort of the ideas of effectiveness a little bit? Last week we heard from a group called Giving What We Can about trying to find particularly effective ways to deal with major problems. Do you think you could address those topics about why India and sort of how you fit into that idea of trying to be effective?
So, great questions. So on the India front, one thing with our intervention is that it's very much focused as a nudge, right? It's not focused on the supply side. It's focused very much on the demand side of getting more parents to the immunization camps. So what that means is it would only work in contexts where the supply side is largely taken care of, and the challenge is mostly on the demand side. And we know with the figures in India, when we're talking about the 10 million children and 7 million of them dropping off, compared to the rest of the world, we're talking about more than a quarter of the children that are dropping off in India. So from that perspective, the fact that the supply side is largely taken care of in India and the challenge now is the demand side, it makes our intervention quite promising in that context. So that's one. Then moving back one step to your broader question around the criteria used for the intervention, our starting point is very much aligned with some of these ideas around effective giving, right? So our starting point was looking at this broader set of research already conducted around cost effectiveness, evidence effectiveness, neglectedness, and tractability. So we spent a fair amount of time looking into health interventions, global health interventions, and narrowing down the interventions based on these criteria. And we know routine immunization itself is a highly cost-effective intervention for, there are stats around how for every dollar invested, we are talking about a large give back in terms of not just immediate health or outcomes, but also in terms of broader economic outcomes, not just for the family, but for the broader community. So routine immunization was a fairly easy one. And then working through different mechanisms to improve uptake of that. The other possibilities considered were around conditional cash transfers, which and then we were trying to see if there could be any other intervention that could beat that in terms of evidence effectiveness and cost effectiveness. And it so happened that this large-scale randomized trial was conducted in India, which increased our confidence in rolling out this intervention in a similar context. So yeah, all to say, some of those criteria have been very much the starting point for us to investigate what we should focus on, and specifically focusing on India.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in the chat that I'll relay. It's what do these immunizations cost? And do most families in the context you're working in have a private doctor? And do they have access through the doctor, or are there free clinics that we're talking about?
Yeah. So in India right now, the immunization is provided by the government, so it is free of cost. The immunization, the routine immunization that we are targeting are largely in the first year of the child's life, and all of them are either offered in the hospitals or public health centers. In certain rural cases, there are specific immunization camps that, again, depending on how rural or urban, occur either once every 2 weeks or once every week, again, all quite disrupted in the last year because of COVID pandemic. But in all cases, they are offered free of charge by the government.
Okay. And they said they wanted to know, do most families have a private doctor that they can depend on?
I would like to quote some figures, but I don't want to get it wrong, especially since you're recording it. But the quick answer is no. Most families do not have a private doctor they can rely on.
Okay. Okay, great. Let's get some more questions. Oh, one question that came up here was backtracking a little bit. What is SMS? They're not familiar with that terminology.
It's mobile reminders. So one thing we had to look into, and we continue to look into, is the efficacy of text reminders to something like WhatsApp, and also comparing it to voice recordings. And while we are fairly confident that text reminders reach a larger percentage of our target population, given data and internet usage is still fairly low, while it has increased over the last decade, it still doesn't reach a large percentage of our target population. But the one area where we are increasingly curious about and need to conduct additional research on is voice recordings. We are looking into the pros and cons of that. Of course, with a voice recording, it's a one-off. It's not something you can go back and look at, or the likelihood is low, whereas a text reminder is likely to stick around longer. But there have been some recent experiments done which are increasing our confidence in voice recording. So that's something we hope to look into fairly soon. But otherwise, SMS is just text reminders that doesn't use too much data and is available even for phones that don't have the latest WhatsApp or huge data.
Okay. We had sort of a follow-up question to the one before that, which is what is the healthcare system? Can you describe it like a little more, the healthcare system in India? Do people have insurance, and is healthcare free or not?
Yeah. So there is a government health system provided, and there are public health centers, and we have some people called ASHAs, that are state health workers, that are assigned to in each community to play that role of the health worker between to nudge parents and families to go to hospitals and get some routine care. In urban areas, there is more of a private, and semi-urban areas, there is more of a private system available. But a quick answer to your question is that we are looking at public health systems and our target populations, the kind of people we are looking at, which is largely rural, largely tribal, certain castes potentially, certain religions potentially, are mostly accessing public health centers, which are provided free of charge by the government.
Okay. Okay, do we have some more questions? Varsha, I don't know what you think, but I did like the video. Do you think if I showed that 2-minute video, would that be worthwhile? You think?
Sure, yeah. And then if people have additional questions at the end of that, that would be, I'm happy to respond.
Okay, so I'll just kind of show this quick video that sort of maybe makes it a little more concrete, so you can see the work in action and hear a little more from some other perspectives. So let me share screen. And again, it's just about 2 minutes, so just give me a sec here.
In India, one child dies every 4 minutes of a vaccine-preventable disease like measles, polio, diarrhea, and pneumonia.
The government has made huge strides in strengthening last-mile immunization infrastructure. but communication with parents is still a barrier. Millions of children each year miss out on getting the right vaccine at the right time because parents lack key information on when or where to attend an immunization camp. We at Suvita are working to bridge this last-mile communication gap. We implement 2 programs to address this based on groundbreaking evidence from Nobel Prize-winning economist Abhijit Banerjee and colleagues. We send caregivers personalized SMS reminders every time their child is due for a vaccine throughout the child's immunization journey. Our technology backbone enables us to deliver customized reminders while also being highly scalable. To complement these reminders, we also harness offline social networks that are central to Indian villages. We identify opinion leaders and invite them to become immunization ambassadors. They use their knowledge of the local context to increase awareness and motivation around vaccines in the village.
वैसे से फायदा बा ये कि टाइम टाइम से आके सुई बच्चा के दिया गल बा आशा आके कह गल बानी के तो हम टाइम से बच्चा के अपना सुई दिवा देले बानी।
मैसेज से यही फायदा है कि मैसेज मिल जाने से हम अलर्ट रहते हैं कि इतना तारीख को बच्चों का टीकाकरण करना है।
मेरे हस्बैंड के पास मैसेज आया है कि बच्चों को टीका दिलवाना है लेकिन डेट याद नहीं है, टीका हम लोग दिवा लेते हैं टाइम से।
This is not only beneficial to their particular child, but it is also beneficial to the whole community, that the children will be healthy and the nation will be strong.
As we scale our program to close the immunization gap, Suvita is working to safeguard a happy and healthy future for India's children.
Okay. So, one second. Okay, so good. So any more questions at the moment? Anything anyone would like to ask? It seems like such a sort of, I don't know, common sense way to address the problem, but the numbers seem to bear out that it really, really helps on a big scale.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the immunization itself, I think it's for every $1, it's $60 return, so no questions there. And then with our nudges, especially with gossip, I think I mentioned earlier, but the 25% increase in uptake in the original study was very compelling and exciting for us. And so I think our motivation right now is to see if our remote version of the same gossip, the ambassador pilot, can be potentially more cost effective. So I think starting out and going back to something you were saying earlier about effective giving, at this point, we expect in terms of cost effectiveness, this is somewhere in the range of maybe $60 for every marginal additional child immunized. And we're hoping to get that down further. And of course, we're looking forward to additional research, including the JPAL paper, to get additional data on how this can be more cost effective and get more kids immunized.
Great. There is one more question, at least here in the chat, which is, how do you onboard the ambassadors? Is there a script you follow to get them excited to work with you, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and it's also a really interesting one that we've been grappling with. So in the original JPAL study, it seems that a lot of the magic is about the question, is about identifying these nodes in a network in a fairly straightforward manner. So it seems it's more about identifying the right ambassadors rather than motivating them in certain ways. Having said that, part of our current theory of change and the kind of additional surveys we are conducting, we actually wrapped up a quick survey of some of the ambassadors last week, and to try and better understand some of the motivations behind why they undertake what they do. So we do have a fairly standard script, especially with the remote version, where we tell them that they have been selected by their peers for this role, and would they be open to take this on in a voluntary basis. We would be sending them bi-weekly SMS messages telling them more about the efficacy of immunization itself and potentially immunization camps in their area. And not much else. I mean, that's the information given, and we seem to have a fairly high percentage of acceptance from these immunization ambassadors to take on that role. But we are curious to better understand, are there specific motivations or are there specific ways we could increase the impact of these ambassadors? Is it some kind of additional incentive, potentially some kind of training, etc.? But all to say that is a question we have, and we want to get closer to finding out, but at the moment we don't have an answer, and we do believe a large part of the impact lies in identifying these right gossips.
Okay, great. And we did get one more. So this person asks, so with regard to the COVID vaccine, do we think that the people you're working with will get them, how high will they be on the priority list? And also, do adults in the area get immunized for things like, they mentioned flu, herpes, tetanus boosters, and that kind of thing?
Yes, but our intervention has only focused on children. The original JPAL research was 0 to 5 years, and our intervention has been 0 to 1, and potentially for catch-up, looking at the second year. In terms of globally how some of the vaccines have been disrupted, it does include other vaccines such as HPV that are not targeted at young infants. But our intervention so far has only focused on children. The SMS reminders intervention has had a component of antenatal care, so it does recruit mothers who or soon to be mothers. So there is an element of breastfeeding and potentially tetanus toxoid injection, which happens for the mother and not the baby. But most of our focus so far has been on the children and their routine immunizations over the first year.
Okay, and then kind of, if we all sort of think of ourselves as maybe immunization ambassadors, this question came to my mind. For those of us who I think we've all encountered, there's some anti-vaccination sentiment going on right now around the world, and it's obviously a hot topic. Is that something that your organization has had to try to overcome at all? People who are resistant to vaccines? Do you have any tips for anyone who's trying to tell someone about the importance of getting vaccines?
That is a really good question. So our focus and where we think the nudges such as SMS reminders and immunization ambassadors seem to be most effective is in the niche of high trust / intent and low inaction, right? Low inaction and inaction. So the mothers don't want to miss a day's work. They don't have the bus fare. They don't want to deal with a crying child. They have seen other kids get sick for a day or two, and they don't want to go through that. So it's more about some of the immediate minor or potentially minor concerns which are inhibiting them from going, but they broadly trust that vaccines are good and they're useful. And that's where our focus has been. There has been some anti-vaccination I wouldn't call it movement, but in pockets in India. But so far, thankfully, it's still largely the population that trusts vaccines are good. We have to see what the sentiments are around COVID, which is part of the reason why we wouldn't want to jump in and say any of these interventions could work in a COVID context, because it's unclear what the trust levels would be with that. But yeah, sorry, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but the quick answer would be I wouldn't have any lessons that could be used for people who strongly believe vaccinations are not good and do not trust them.
Yeah. Well, one stat I read was just that I think it's 2 to 3 million children per year. You said that experts estimate that many children per year, their lives are saved by vaccines, basically. So, yeah. Yes. You can always throw that one at people. Yeah.
If you think that would move the people, sure, you can throw that.
Yeah.
Yes, and the cost effectiveness and yeah, it's sure. I doubt that's sufficient to convince somebody who's in that camp, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Varsha is just, I think we're going to wrap up soon. I put in the chat, I'll put them again. You are having an end of the year crowdfunding campaign. So if anyone would like to try to donate to help this work, that's appreciated. No pressure. If you want to, I'll put it there in the chat. Any last questions? Okay, Varsha, do you have anything to add if people want to follow up on Suvita's work, how they can stay in touch?
Sure, please visit our website. And something I did want to add was that we are hiring a head of operations. And so if you read the job description and it seems aligned with something you may be interested in, or you have networks you can post in, or you have recommendations for people who could apply, please do reach out.
All right. Okay, Varsha, thank you so much. And thanks for the important work you're doing.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're getting, I don't know if you can hear it, but you got a round of applause.
I did, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you everyone for coming. I will stay on here for a minute. If you have any questions about our talk series or anything that you saw today, I'll also put a link to next week's talk, which is a week from today at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. And so I'll put that link there. So thank you all for coming, really appreciate it. There will be a recording if you'd like to see the recording later. Thank you, Varsha, have a good night.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye.